Hello and welcome to another episode of the UConn Daily Podcast. This is Aman Kidwai, joined by John Silver. We're working our hardest to make this podcast match the integrity of its name as the UConn Daily Podcast. Took last week off due to the holiday and some extended illness, but we're back. We're in action. We're ready to go twice a week on the podcast, get a newsletter out, and talk all things UConn sports at this incredibly interesting time in the winter season with baseball about to start as well. So we'll have plenty to discuss. Right now, basketball. UConn men's basketball has lost 3 out of its last 5 after losing at Xavier on Saturday night. 76-72 it was. A really interesting game. UConn's been playing a lot of interesting games, a lot of games that are tough to explain and describe, John, but that's our job here. So they have the loss to Xavier before that on Tuesday night at home, overtime win over Butler. You didn't want to see it be that close there. Previous Saturday, lost to Creighton, kind of a wire-to-wire L there, essentially for UConn. The question on everyone's mind right now, should Dan Hurley be concerned? Should people on that team be concerned? Should UConn fans be concerned right now? They've lost 3 out of their last 5 in Big East play. Still a lot of season ahead, but that also could mean a lot more losses ahead. You think there's reason for concern and maybe shifting expectations as previously discussed?
Concern? No. It's still early in the season. We're sitting here January 26th. The month of February is when the rubber hits the road. But, on the other part of your question, adjusting expectations, I don't think how you can have Final Four expectations with this team with how they've performed, especially in a clutch spot. And I know they're without Liam McNeely, so he may have been able to pick up maybe all these wins that they lost if they had him. But, what Liam McNeely does not necessarily solve for their clear deficiencies that they have, which is twofold. Number one, on defense, they're not a good defensive team. And they compound not being a good defensive team. I think I have Ken Pomre up. They're 132 in KenPom in defense. So I don't want anybody saying blah blah blah. They're not a good defensive team. Not nearly what would Hurley probably would expect. And we'd have to unpack that because I'm still confused why they're not good defensively, to be quite honest. But then number two is they also foul like way too much. We complain about the officials, and I'm the number one guy on the official brigade. I think sometimes the college refs are poor, and I think they're emotional. Okay, and so, but some of them are really good. But at the end of the day, what I'm seeing also is maybe they're nitpicking on Connecticut for whatever reason, or UConn for whatever reason, but they're still fouling. Like I don't see anything super egregious like out in Maui, which I thought was egregious. I mean, there's been they're not getting a great whistle, but they're also fouling too much. Aman, they had 22 fouls against Xavier. They can't win the game. They're not going to win the game. You look at their 9 or their 10 Big East games, they've been beaten from the foul line. If UConn's just even from the foul line, they're probably +5 more in wins. So they're really putting themselves defensively by not being good defensively, so they can't stop anybody, and then they give people the most efficient shots in basketball, which is free throws. And because of that, they really have a defensive problem that I think is gonna limit their ceiling. Top 10, they're even without McNeely, they're still ranked in the top 10 in the offense. So they're as elite as offense as there is out there. But until they start getting defensive stops and stop putting people to the line, I mean, their points per possessions is not very good. It's a little more than just get in front of your man. I think they have a team-wide issue here that's really hard to fathom, especially with the way Hurley coaches and his intensity. But that's just where we are right now with the team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you don't want to believe that McNeely will solve every single problem that we've seen out of this UConn team so far, including, like you've mentioned, the foul situation. I would also add kind of just low post toughness. that rebounding ability. McNeely's a good rebounder,
Hmm.
but that's not his primary thing. Same with passing, even ball handling.
Yeah.
McNeely's a good ball handler. He's a great, player to have for that. I think he's a really great passer, but UConn, as we've also previously discussed, is struggling from this lack of a true point guard, lack of a playmaking ball handler,
Hmm.
lead guard type person from the guard position. And I think when you lose a Tristan Newton and Cam Spencer and Stephon Castle, that's kind of part of what you lost there on this team. And with Aiden Mahaney, I think what we're seeing is flashes of what they had wanted to see from him this year, or want to see from him this year. Just hasn't been as consistent
Yeah.
out of him. And so I think, to see the way he played in the Xavier game, though, that's promising, right? We're talking about looking for signs of improvement. It's that Aiden Mahaney looked really solid. Samson Johnson looked
Hmm.
like he's been trying to be a bit more assertive and doing what he can to, even as a leader, rile his teammates up. I think Samson Johnson, as a senior, is starting to feel the urgency of, what goes down in this kind of season if we don't start really, really trying hard. And then Alex Caravan is someone who UConn just needs more from. It has to be said. I think he's really gutted out a lot of stuff already this season
Hmm.
with a few dings injury wise. I think fouling out this past game, that was a situation of maybe a couple of questionable fouls with him specifically there. He got off to a slow start in that game. Um, I do applaud, though. I think he is starting to also just take more shots. I
Yeah.
think he's such a smart player
Yeah.
that he, really wants the best shot possible. He'll pass up a okay shot for himself for a better shot for someone else, and maybe he needs to not do that and just take that shot. So I think there's some progress being made here, but it's going to be tough. As they continue without McNeely, he did bring a lot. He did mean a lot to this team already
Yeah.
at such an early point. That's just kind of, it is what it is. I think at this point, in terms of UConn, this team and its expectations, it's that they bounce right back to a different point once Liam McNeely returns, as Mahaney maybe starts to find a little bit more consistency. And, UConn kind of makes that resume argument of, look, at fully healthy, UConn's a different team than what you saw over these last 5 games. And that's kind of the hope there going forward.
Yeah, I agree with you there on that. I mean, there's a lot of runway left, and when you look at their losses, 2 points to Xavier. I mean, you can. There's a toss up against Butler that they did one. They lost to Villanova last second. Creighton game was down to the last minute. I mean, if things go a little their way, uh, they could have 3, 4, 5 more wins. I mean, even out in Maui, they lost 2 games in the final minute. So, but then when you're 1-6 in those kind of games, or 1-5 or whatever they are in those close games, then you got to wonder, is there something missing there? Is that a pattern of what we're seeing? And I think defensively, that's where they are. That's going to be their Achilles heel. That's why we're not going to see them if they get knocked out before we expect. In the NCAA tournament, or even struggle to get in if they continue losing these games, it would be because of their defenses. That might be something they can't overcome. But they do have a problem on offense of somebody who can just take the ball and create when things break down. Now they're so good on offense when they're patient and they're purposeful. They're really good. But if teams defend and they're not reading it right, they're a 7 of 26 from three. I know I lamented the fouls that they have, and that's big. They Xavier had 24 free throws, and you can just in the game Saturday, but you kind of got their fair share. But the biggest issue is they're 7 of 26 from three. They got Caravan Ball has to hit threes. They do need McNeely back because McNeely's a shooter. I'd like to see Mahaney. It was nice to see him hit a couple. He's came here as a shooter slash combo guard. He needs to start. We need production from him. They need him to score points. Spell DR off the bench because I mean I don't think you can play Hassan DR 40 minutes. Especially when if he gets into foul trouble like he did the other night.
Yeah, you got to have more from him. I will say, solo ball, another just what an amazing emergence from
Yeah.
him. He's someone who, in this quest to find that, more consistent scoring, he really has been
Yeah.
that guy. 20 points in the Xavier game, 23 against Butler. That was a career high for him. He's had 22 points twice this season, including the previous Xavier game. In general, he's been a really, really consistent scorer. I think he's had only 2 games this season. He's had only 2 games this season without scoring double digits. So it's been an impressive rise from solo ball. People have talked about his need to improve on defense. Again, that's a team wide
Mhm.
issue there. But in terms of what you've seen from him offensively, I mean, it's really enticing and it's really exciting to have him develop in this way, I think.
Yeah, no, he's a scorer. Like he's only scratched the surface of his ability, and I just think he has a knack for getting open and scoring buckets. I mean, what he had 20 last game, 20 and 11. He has a smooth shot from three. He's only going to get better as he gets quicker from three because teams are starting to play him closer. So he's going to need to learn to maybe has his shot a little faster, but that's something you can work on in the off season. Um, I like what we saw. He's starting to put the ball on the floor. It seems like he has that little mid-range pull-up game. I'm not going to be one of those old timers who think we want guys to shoot 15 footers all day. But if it's there, I like him from 13, 14 feet taking open shots instead of crashing to the basket. But I think that the next step for him is could he get other people involved too? Does the possession just end with him? Now teams are going to key on him. Does that, is there one more pass he can do to get somebody a really good open shot? So I'm hoping. I'm not worried about their offense, though. To be quite honest, I think when McNeely comes back, and part of their big problem is Jalen Stewart's showing a lot of potential, but his consistency, he's just been boomer bust too much. And I think when McNeely comes back, a little more production per minute offensively for him. Um, I think they're gonna be fine offensively. You're gonna see them crank, but NCAA tournament's tough. The rest of the Big East is tough. Do you really want to rely on outscoring people? That's you have to hang your hat on the defensive end of the floor, make it tough for the other team to score. Or else you're just you're at the mercy of luck. To be honest with you, if somebody runs into a hot shooting night and didn't regress to the meeting, right? Oh, they had a hot shooting night. Well, that beats you in college basketball. Hot shooting nights happen all the time. We've
Mm.
seen it this year already. Some guy like
Yeah.
just with some random hot shooting night. I mean, you can't rely on your offense at this level of basketball, maybe, and that's I think what they're learning, and it has to be frustrating for Dan Hurley because you know from how he played and how physical he played. And then I remember watching him at Wagner when he first got into the college ranks, and he was a crazy guy back then too. But it was always that tough as nails. They'll grind you, they'll defend, and then they'll figure it out on offense. And he did go, I think, the appropriate way. They went towards more skill and shooting. I think and he's talked about that extensively the last couple of years. Is like we need to score, and they really targeted guys who can do things with the ball. Now now they got to figure out how to get back to how he would love basketball to be played. You have to be a complete basketball team to do something in March, and right now they're not that. Even 100% healthy. I mean, they're going to be dangerous because they can score, but who knows? They're going to be like one of those wild cards out there. Maybe the name on the jersey spooks some teams in the early rounds. But I don't. If you told me they got to the Final Four because they got hot, I'd be mildly surprised. You told me they got knocked off in the first round, 80-78, because they gave up 30 free throws. I'm not going to be surprised either. I'll be mildly
Yeah.
surprised, but it's like yeah, that's kind of where they are right now. So I don't have a good,
Mhm.
good gauge on where they are. I'd like to. I don't know. I'd like to know what happened to Terrace Reed. To be honest with you, he looked dominant for about a 3 week stretch there, and now he can't get. He's over physical. There, I think he's trying to make up for what they're telling him to do on defense by being more physical. And you want to be physical, but you don't want to foul. Like you gotta be a little smarter with your contact.
Yeah, Reed. has these stretches where he looks like he's able to be such a difference maker. And then, yeah, the only question is why don't we see a little bit more of that, more consistency? Yeah, I mean, I think that's the one thing about this team that's similar to last year's teams is you never know who they're going to need or go to. But in this case, it's just kind of in more dire situations, and not as good of a situation for the team overall when we're talking about who leads in a 14-point win. Oh, anyone can lead you guys in scoring, but this is like anyone can get us out of the hole when we're down 7 against Butler and need to find 6 points real quick.
Yeah.
I think that's a great point. Yeah, it's Terrace Reed has to find that consistency because low post play. Samson Johnson has taken a bit of a step up recently, but that's going to be something where teams have a formula on how to beat UConn. They can attack certain players defensively. They can establish themselves down low if they want to, the way Xavier did early in this game. There's no one, obviously there's no Donovan Clingan to state the obvious, but there's not, necessarily the strongest rebounding operation here on this UConn team. So, yeah, it's interesting how UConn's reputation will carry itself in this whole season. I mean, we could argue that this has been the one year where UConn has gotten the most respect reputationally compared to its actual resume, just given that they lost those 3 games so early in the season and kind of stayed nationally relevant because of what had happened in the previous years. I think now what's really clear is, this is not that same team, again, state the obvious, 4 or 5 guys, go away. But also just that, this point of it's such a get revenge on UConn season for every other team, right? I mean, this guy Maddox on Xavier, right? He's just playing lights out in every UConn game. He's averaging like single digit points, except when he plays UConn, when he's scoring 18 and 22 points in these games. And so, after what they experienced against UConn over these last 2 years, everyone is still giving UConn just its absolute best shot. St. John's, same thing. They're going to want it, right? They're going to want it so bad. February 1st, UConn's at Marquette. How badly do you think Shaka Smart wants that win, no matter what the implications are for this season and its standings? So everyone just wants to beat UConn so badly, but I do think they'll get a little bit of a boost in kind of the considerations around NCAA tournament time, both because of previous tournament success recently, but also I think because of what I mentioned earlier, this piece about, if they are demonstrably better once McNeely gets back, they can say, look, we're this team, isolate the stats, we're this team, not anything that happened before.
Yeah, that's going to be the big thing is if McNeely comes back and they start winning some games, those losses will get discounted. Right now, we look at them. I think it's fair to say they're a 6-7 seed, right? I don't think they're an 8 yet. I mean, you take their 36 ranking, KenPom, which is which is my favorite metrics to use. I think they're a little better than that. But still, I mean, you're sitting at an 8-7-6 line right now. They're going to have to play better, get a little bit of separation, challenge for the Big East regular season title. If they're going to push up into a higher seed line, you'd like to see them 5 and above. No, I think no 5 seed has ever won the national title. I don't know. So I'm just saying. I mean, but which is odd, like a 6, 7, 8. Everyone, they've gone all the way up, but the 5 seed has never won a national title in NCAA history, which is there's always a first. UConn was the first 7 to win, also. So, but I'm looking at them like right now. If I had to put them in, I'd put them like a 6 or a 7. Maybe depending on who you play, and that's what. That's dangerous, man. We've all seen you can go to the Final Four from the area or get bounced in the first round rather abruptly. 2 hours into the tournament, you're done. So, but listen, if they don't improve that defensively, they're gonna be worried just about getting in the tournament because a couple more losses here, and then this is not the SEC. On the it's not the old Big East where you have somebody every week. I mean, or every game. The teams at the top are good. The bottom's not very good at all. Their strength of
Mhm.
schedule is not going to be there, and a lot of those power conference teams out of the Big Ten and the SEC, they're going to get those bids due to the depth of their league.
Really challenging stretch of schedule coming
Yeah.
up in February. The Huskies will have a bit of a soft landing after this loss on Wednesday. They'll have DePaul at the XL Center January 29th.
But the doctor.
But then once February hits, like I mentioned, February 1st, they're playing Marquette. The 7th, they're hosting St. John's. They're at Creighton on the 11th. They host Villanova on the 18th. That's a really big game. They're going to be at St. John's at MSG on the 23rd, and they'll have Georgetown at home. No slouch,
Mm.
after that. So that's going to be the prove it stretch for them to say, hey, look, McNeely might come back around this time, and they really have to win a lot of those to, like you're saying, move up to that 5-4 line and bring themselves into a decent place in the tournament slate. But hey, at least it'll be interesting to watch. It won't be a coronation like the last season, and so we'll be on our toes, keeping up
Yeah.
with Dan Hurley and this Husky team.
No, I think it's going to be well for them. It's going to work well for them. McNeely's going to be out a month. Well, you hear the term high ankle sprain. It's always a month. That's just the way it
Mhm.
is. And nobody ever heals fast from those. So we'll see how he's doing. I think they really need just what he brings back. He brings a little bit of um, uh, uh, offensive physicality at least, but he competes on defense also, and he's just he's probably their
Yeah.
most talented player. So I'd like to see any other team in the conference lose a player the caliber of McNeely and stay where they are.
Yep. Absolutely. So, following up on a previous segment that we had in a recent episode with our friend Daniel Connolly, we told you guys to keep an eye out for UConn men's hockey. They're having a really exciting and fun season brewing. This is looking like the most successful season for UConn men's hockey since it moved up to Hockey East, and that is continuing to be the case. This past weekend, Mike Kavanaugh's Huskies defeated Quinnipiac in their first game of the CTIs, first time that's happened in a while, and claimed the CT Ice crown for the very first time. This tournament has been a long time in the making, only started about 5 or so years ago. There's been 5 times. They missed it one year. But it's has escaped UConn's grasp to win this tournament. They've been able to do that. They've moved up to number 4 in pairwise, which is basically RPI. You can think about it. Like Connolly mentioned, it is the full authority of the NCAA Tournament Selection Committee in NCAA hockey. So what that means is UConn at number 4 would be a 1 seed in the NCAA tournament if it were to start today. Pairwise, once you get towards the end of the season, can be pretty tough to move down. We're not at the end of the season quite yet. A lot of big games still to come. Series with Providence, hosting UMass Lowell, Maine BU still on the schedule to play. But hey, great stuff for this program. It's been a long time coming for people wondering when we're going to see returns from this team, and it looks like this is the year at the very least that they're going to make the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out my hockey brain and get it going. But here's what I do know when looking at their schedule and where they are, and when you factor in pairwise, is you look at the top of it. It's Boston College, then you have Michigan State, then Minnesota, and then the tied in number 4th is Maine, and then UConn's 4. So they're in the midst of it with some of the powers of college hockey. I think this is why going into America East was such a great thing for the program. First of all, it's recruiting. It's great hockey. It's the best hockey conference out there. But they have Boston College, they have Maine, they have Providence. They're just coming off a win over Quinnipiac, which obviously was an America East, but it's a non-conference. But all these teams, the opportunity to, even if you win or tie these teams, it just goes into these rankings because all these teams are so good that you're in the tournament. Like right now, I mean, they'd have to. They're 14-8-2. And they might be a one seed. I mean, that's wild to me. But as Dan said, is like they have good players and they're playing. They're playing finally to their potential. They're not having whatever happened last year with all that talent and those weird losses. That's just it's kind of the worm has turned this year. So, I'm excited to see where they go because there's a market for hockey in Connecticut. And I
Absolutely.
think we look at what Yale and Quinnipiac look like. So let's not even go into the Beanpot in Boston. That's a different area. But even Yale and Quinnipiac, they have such rabid followings. It's small. It's a niche sport. But I think UConn could replicate that here, and then you have some pretty good hockey in this state when you consider even what Sacred Heart's doing.
Hmm. Yeah, and hey, look, it was also exciting stuff. That UConn Quinnipiac game, tied at 1. UConn's game-winning goal goes through with half a second left. Just
Wow.
incredible stuff to get that win there. And then, hey, really gutsy win over Sacred Heart in the final, 1-0, holding on for that win there. So just really strong. Not that they won by dominating them talent wise. They won 2 really gutsy games, and I think it's not just about making it in; it's about making a dent once you're in there and making some noise. And I think
Hmm.
UConn has the potential to do that. They have some potential to make noise in the Hockey East tournament once that hits at the end of this year, and then NCAA tournament. That's going to be the biggest games in program history coming up this March if they can make it. So again, folks, we are alerting you for the second time. Please do not ignore this warning. UConn men's hockey, catch the magic. This is the year for them. That's looking quite good. There's still lots of action to be had this season for you to check out. On February 1st, they'll be at the XL Center hosting Providence. I might go to that game, John. They'll be at the Toscano Family Ice Forum. They've got for the UMass game. They'll be back at XL for the UMass Lowell game, and then a handful at Toscano. So, have you been to the new rink,
I,
John? Have you had a chance to see it?
I've seen a new rink. I haven't watched a game there though. It's just
Mhm.
it never seems to work. The Fridays, Saturdays are just when you have family is
It's tough.
it's really tough. But I'd like to get up there before probably sometime in February. Just
Mhm.
to check out a full game there. It's a beautiful arena, though. I can tell you that just from
Yes.
taking a quick walk around inside. I had a nice little tour from someone a time ago. So it is a beautiful place. But I'd
Yeah.
like to see that place
I think
packed.
it's great. It's
Yeah.
absolutely. It's huge for the program to have
Mm.
it. It's a lovely arena. It's going to stay lovely. I think they're going to maintain that well. Hopefully, make improvements to it over the years. I went to my first game there. I went to a couple of women's hockey games last
Mhm.
year. That's how I was able to catch a game there. I have not seen the men's team play there yet, but yeah, great place to catch a
Yeah.
game. I think the possibilities with that place full in an on-campus, situation with a team that's rocking and a on-campus environment that's rocking, there's a lot of potential there. Like you're saying,
Mm.
not just this market, but for UConn to really support a hockey team if they get good. They had some momentum in 2019, as Connolly told us, kind of tithered away with the pandemic and then
Mm.
some losses around that. But they've got that momentum back, and I think that's the direction they're moving in, and that's really exciting. And yeah, definitely, folks, go to the XL Center, find your way to the Toscano Family Ice Forum. It's good stuff right now, and they're entertaining to watch.
Mm.
I am told. So that's going to do it for this episode of the UConn Daily Podcast. This is Amon Kidwai with John Silver. Thank you all for listening and or watching.